Hello, Namaskar, Vanakkam. In this video today, we are going to talk about what the Act 5, Scene 1 of The Merchant of Venice is all about. We will do the detailed explanation of the scene in later videos, but essentially so that you know what this scene is and how is it different from the rest of the play. Now, the most important aspect about this concluding scene of the play is that this has none of the elements that the main plot of The Merchant of Venice actually deals with, which is Shylock's thirst for revenge, right? And that's what we saw playing out in the longish trial scene in Act 4, Scene 1. Now, in this particular scene, romance is brought back center stage because remember, a movie essentially is a romantic comedy. Underline this. So, the focus in this particular scene is therefore on the three lover pairs: Lorenzo and Jessica, Portia and Bassanio, Graciano and Nerissa, right? And there are a significant number of classical literature references which some students find quite tricky to remember, which they are not. So the first thing you need to know is to remember the three classical literature references which have been made both from the point of view of the MCQs and also as a possible reference to context question, though I would think the possibility of them being asked as an MCQ is quite high now. Now, before we get into the explanation of the scene, let us understand the broad contours of the scene. कि ये scene में आखिर है क्या, right? पहली बात, 5 or 6 broad points. Jessica and Lorenzo compare themselves to figures from classical literature like Troilus and Cressida, Pyramus and Thisbe, and Dido and Aeneas. Now, that is followed by Portia and Nerissa's return from Venice to Belmont. Okay, and then follows the logical conclusion of the entire ring test and the revelation that Antonio's ships are safe. So, what does that mean? And this is an important linkage that you should be able to make in case a similar kind of a reference to context comes, that whatever Tubal said in Act 3, Scene 1 were all lies. Okay, that's a significant revelation that you learn only at the end of Act 5, Scene 1. More importantly, this scene is a focus on the test of love. Okay, both Portia and Nerissa subject Bassanio and Graciano respectively to test of love through the entire ring episode. Now, what is interesting in contrast is that Jessica and Lorenzo actually never undergo any kind of test as opposed to Bassanio and Graciano. And also, they compare their love to three disastrous love stories. Love stories which were really not the perfect and the most happy love stories. And makes you wonder what William Shakespeare actually thought of Lorenzo and Jessica's love story, because their love seems to be more based on the daughter's dislike for whatever her father Shylock did, the whole focus on Jewism, the Jew faith versus the Christian faith, and the fact that she's willing to steal from her own house in order to seek revenge against her father. So, it's a slightly different kind of a love story as compared to Bassanio and Graciano's love story. Now, the other important aspect that you need to bear in mind, because I want you to think about these questions, and when you think, you'll be able to understand and appreciate the scene that much better. It will make it easier for you to deal with all the references to context. What is the most important aspect of this concluding scene? One, Portia and Nerissa teach their husbands the value of marriage, the value of a committed relationship. The rings are a symbol of the promise the two husbands made to their respective wives, and therefore it is a symbol of the sanctity of marriage. Okay. Therefore, Bassanio and Graciano giving away their rings to Portia and Nerissa in disguise, they gave them to the lawyer and his clerk, is therefore a violation of the marriage contract. Okay, please remember this. It's also a sign that Bassanio perhaps loves Antonio more than he loves Portia. Though he says that, of course, Portia is important, he went and chose the right casket for her, all that is fine. But somewhere it's also coming across that for Bassanio, Antonio is perhaps the most important person. We saw that through references during the trial scene. So while Portia definitely respects Antonio and appreciates the fact that he is her husband's best friend, she knows also that her husband has to consider her the most important person now that they are married, right? So therefore she uses the ring trick in order to test her husband's uh, commitment to the whole idea of marriage, the institution of marriage. Point number 4, and this is I find very interesting, the contrast between Belmont and Venice. Okay. And the contrast therefore between Act 4 and Act 5, Act 4 Scene 1 and Act 5 Scene 1, because Belmont represents what? It represents romance, it represents music, it represents leisure. Venice on the other hand represents money, wealth, trade, and the loss, right? So you always need to remember this contrast that's also built into the play by Shakespeare between these two important cities. Finally, the play also, this particular scene also marks the formal ending of Shylock's villainy. Okay, because in Shakespeare's worldview, Shylock is the villain, right? Though many of us may actually end up sympathizing more with Shylock and we think that this Antonio is no good. I mean, he also had done enough in order to enrage Shylock and make him want to seek revenge, right? So it's a formal end of Shylock's villainy because in the end he loses both his money, he also loses his daughter, right? To the same person, Lorenzo. And the old order is restored with Antonio getting back all his ships. Okay, so in the next couple of videos or so, we will discuss the scene for those who are looking for notes, MCQs, reference to context questions. All those are part of our MOV 10 course on the SWS app, right? Thank you very much for watching.